CNN has learned that former President Trump will huddle with his legal team at Mar-a-Lago this weekend as a potential indictment looms over his alleged role in hush money payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. A source tells CNN Trump is weighing whether to appear before a New York grand jury. It's investigating the payments that were made days before the 2016 presidential election, and Manhattan prosecutors have invited Trump to appear. CNN senior legal analyst and former federal and state prosecutor Elie Honig joins me now. His new book is Untouchable: How Powerful People Get Away with It. And Elie, I always feel like when I read the title, it is a perfect segue to all of our conversations. I know I made that remark last week. I'll make it again. But what do you think Trump will ultimately decide to do? He's not going to go in there and talk to the grand jury. He's not going to do that.
Absolutely not. No, no way. There would be no reason for him to do that. Now, this is actually an unusual feature of New York state law. This isn't just the prosecutors being nice and giving him a chance to do this. They have to give any potential defendant a chance to come in and testify in the grand jury. That's actually not the law in many states. That's certainly not the law federally. But there's no upside here. Donald Trump is not going to talk a grand jury out of doing whatever it might do. All he can do is give information that can be used to incriminate him in this case or in many of the other civil lawsuits and pending criminal investigations against him. So easy call for Donald Trump here. Thank you for the invitation, but I respectfully decline.
And we've been talking about the Stormy Daniels case for years now. And you and I have talked about it for years now, I feel like. But does that timeline matter legally?
So legally, it does not matter. Some people have asked about the statute of limitations, which usually is 5 years, meaning you have to charge a case within 5 years of when it ended. Here, these payments happened 6.5 years ago. But the thing is, New York prosecutors are going to be okay on that count because there's a law in New York State that says if somebody has been continuously residing outside of New York State, you put that clock on hold. So they're well within the statute of limitations. But Jim, the amount of time that has passed here is going to make this prosecution more difficult for the prosecutors because it's harder to stand in front of a jury and argue about something that happened that long ago and make them believe that it's serious and that it's urgent. So to an extent, the amount of time that's passed is going to make this a tougher job for prosecutors.
And Trump's lawyers are saying that this case is unprecedented. I suppose that is the understatement of the year, but are they right?
They're right in a couple of respects. First of all, of course, if there's an indictment, we all know this would be the first ever indictment of a former president. That would be historic. That would be unprecedented. But they're also right as a matter of law, because the theory here that prosecutors appear to be using is, first of all, they're going to charge, it looks like, falsification of business records, which is a misdemeanor, meaning basically these were hush money payments, but they falsely booked them as attorney fees. But then in order to bump it up to a low-level felony, prosecutors are going to have to prove that it was connected to some other crime. And here it looks like they're going to argue it was a campaign finance crime relating to the presidential election. But what we don't know here is this is a state-level prosecution. The campaign finance violation was federal, relating to the race for president. And there's no law on that, and that's going to have to be decided by a judge. And that's unprecedented as well.
And in your new book, you unveiled that the Southern District of New York considered charging this case 2 years ago, but decided against it. Does that give us any insight into what the outcome may be here?
So legally, it does not matter. It doesn't mean that the Manhattan DA cannot prosecute this case. They can come to a different conclusion than the feds, my former office across the street, did. Also, we're dealing with different sets of law. And who knows, the Manhattan DA may well have come up with some new evidence that the feds didn't have 2 years ago. That said, I think it's important. I think the Manhattan DA would be well advised to consider the feds' logic. Look, the feds, when they looked at this case, the Southern District of New York, they believed that the evidence was sufficient to charge, but not overwhelming. And the Southern District of New York was wary about the political factors. They were wary about the fact that this felt, A, old, and B, fairly low on the list of Trump's misconduct. So this is a difficult call for any prosecutor. There's no necessarily right or wrong answer. But I think the Manhattan DA would be well advised to at least look across the street and look at what the thought process was there.
And aside from Trump and Stormy Daniels, the other key player here is Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer, who's been very critical, sharply critical of the former president. Does that complicate things? We all know Michael Cohen. We've heard from Michael Cohen a lot. He was on this program last week. I mean, he does not pull his punches when it comes to his old boss.
He does not. Michael Cohen looks like he's going to be a pivotal witness in this case. On the one hand, Michael Cohen clearly had insider access. He was in the middle of this transaction. He pled guilty to it. And many of the things that Michael Cohen has said since he did his prison time about Donald Trump have been proven out to be true. On the other hand, the reality is, like it or not, Michael Cohen is going to be vulnerable to a searing cross-examination. He has been convicted of perjury. He has been convicted of tax fraud and financial fraud. He denies that he did it, but he pled guilty to those crimes. Michael Cohen also, as you say, Jim, the man has a white-hot hatred for Donald Trump. He cannot open his mouth without saying something negative about Donald Trump. That's his right. But on cross-examination, they're going to argue to a jury, this guy absolutely despises Donald Trump. He'd do anything to get him, and that's going to undermine his credibility. So Michael Cohen's going to be a key witness here. I understand why one may want to rest the case on him. I get where prosecutors are going, but make no mistake, defense lawyers are going to have a lot of hay to make here on cross-examination.
And of course, this is just one of several cases that may be on the horizon for the former president. And of course, we'll talk about those as they come along. Elie Honig, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Good to talk to you.